I miss the old YouTube. Does anyone remember chapstick challenges, story times, escape the nights, thrift vlogs, YouTube rewind, reviews, mukbangs, all of it? When the platform felt like real people making videos about real things. When did we go from Charlie bit my finger to I'll give you $500,000 if you let me rock you inside of a room for a month? It's as if the platform we all fell in love with is completely unrecognizable from what drew us to it in the first place. YouTube changed into this almost dystopian landscape where every video has to be some form of extreme, whether that's spending money or spending time in a way that is completely not realistic to anything anybody would actually do in their real life. I feel like YouTube became industrialized. It stopped rewarding creativity and only rewarded optimization, which primarily became centered around creators just copying one another whenever they saw something else get views. When did the humanity of YouTube die? Why did its evolution kill creativity? Can YouTube do anything to go back to the beautiful place we all fell in love with? Well, that is exactly the question we set out to answer today. Hi, I'm Nikki.
And I'm Coco.
And welcome back to the Share Your Screen podcast. And more specifically, an evolution of YouTube really is what I want to talk about in today's episode, and why I think that YouTube, or at least like the spirit of YouTube, kind of feels like it died a bit.
I know, like the spirit was really experimental and now it's just formulaic.
Formulaic is a great way to describe it.
And it's great for creators, but it's not always great for a user. It's not interesting anymore.
Yeah, and like really my thesis of this video is exactly like what you said. I think that the platform stopped rewarding creativity and started to only reward optimization and really this formulaic style of content above all else, down to the point where the platform doesn't even care if you literally copy paste a thumbnail from another creator. Like there is no penalization. In fact, you're rewarded for it because somebody else's video got promoted in the algorithm and then it gets a similar click-through rate. And I just think this entire incentivization structure, like this pigeonhole it's found itself down, is so interesting, and it has made me sad as somebody who like grew up on YouTube. I feel like people always have like their thing when they're a kid. Like for some people, it's Disney Channel or Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network or MTV, whatever. And for me, it really felt like that YouTube was that thing for me. And when analyzing like the evolution of YouTube and how it got to this point, I think it's really important to look at the different eras of YouTube, because YouTube as a platform has been through many eras. And I kind of define them into three categories. The first being the genesis of YouTube, which I kind of defined from 2008 to 2014. The second chapter being this creator boom we saw from 2015 to 2019.
Was that like the Vine takeover?
The Vine takeover. Vine plays a big part of it later on. And then chapter 3 is like this industrialization. So like kind of 2020 until present day. And I think it's really important to, when I was doing research on all of this, like the timeline is very important because I feel like every era really led into the next in a very specific way. And I think when you kind of analyze the trajectory of how we got to this point, it's a lot easier to kind of make predictions as to how YouTube is going to change in the future. And going all the way back to when the platform was founded in 2005, and the first viral video happened in December of 2005 called Lazy Sunday. It was the first video to ever get 2 million views in 24 hours. And what's really funny about this video is it was actually a meme song. Like it was just an ironic music video made by 3 SNL staffers. And it ran in between skits while they were breaking down or changing the set. And it got really popular. Like, I guess the audience thought it was funny, so someone bootlegged it from TV and downloaded it to YouTube. None of them had even heard of YouTube at the time. And they were so shocked that this short that they made did better on this platform they had never even heard of than it did on SNL. But SNL ended up filing a cease and desist, actually, and got this video taken down. But 30 days after that, the damage had already been done. And the daily average views on YouTube increased by 22 million. So this one video from a random SNL in between skits single-handedly put YouTube on the map. And I also think that this is weirdly why YouTube was dominated by sketch comedy for so long. Like, if you think about like early YouTube, like I'm saying this Genesis era, like 2008 to 2014 was so much millennial sketch comedy. And I literally think that is because this core audience of YouTube came from SNL. Like the first 22 million people on the platform were all SNL fans, which is really, really interesting. And then what are the things they're going to click on? Probably things related to comedy. So it's just interesting how even these happy accidents can completely define how an algorithm operates for years to come after that. Which brings us to October 9th, 2006, when YouTube is bought by Google. And this is really, really important when talking about advertising. And my goal is not to bore anybody with talking about advertising on YouTube, but I think if you want to understand why YouTube has made the decision that's made as a platform, it's very important to understand how they're making money, because how they're making money is why 99% of the decisions that are made happen to be made. This really defines what advertising in the digital age comes to be, is YouTube and Google versus Facebook and Instagram. Because YouTube and Google, the reason this acquisition was so genius is that if Google didn't buy YouTube, YouTube would have been their biggest competitor. Like this concept of us searching things online to solve the answer to problems. Like if you want to know how to iron your shirt, like that stuff like that is not searchable really.
It's
like
so
I don't want to
visual.
see exactly. It's visual. These visual mediums would have replaced Google in terms of things we search. And because of that, instead of YouTube being their biggest enemy, it became their biggest ally. So people search how to dry clean my shirt on Google, but the number one search option that pops up is YouTube. And this just exploded the entire world of like how we discover things as humans on the internet.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting is in Taylor Loren's book, Extremely Online, which we always reference, she has a chapter, and sorry if I get it a little bit wrong, but she basically talks about how the head of video at Google at the time, her name was Susan Wojcicki. I'm so sorry if I pronounced it wrong, but Susan, she was tasked by Google with creating their own video department to compete with YouTube. But she used the budget that they gave her to create a video department to just buy YouTube.
And that's the smartest decision anyone's ever made. Yeah.
It's probably one of the best business decisions in modern 21st history.
And I think it's also like a good lesson too, as we get to the social media platforms that came later on, was how they were very smart to turn a potential enemy into an ally.
Yeah.
And you'll see how companies that survive 5 to 10 years in this industry are very good at that. They don't shy away and try to like fight innovation once it starts to be the next wave. They focus on essentially how do we use the money and resources we have to make it our ally instead of our enemy. And this is a really, really perpetuated by the music industry and their entertainment industry later on, which we'll talk about. But in 2007, also, YouTube makes the greatest decision, I think, in the history of the internet, and launches the YouTube Partnership Program, which is essentially just the AdSense structure where they put an ad on your video, the creator gets 50% of it, YouTube, the platform, gets 50% of the ad revenue.
And it's no money out of YouTube's pocket.
It's no money out of their pocket. And this one decision completely redefined social media as we knew it. And it is single-handedly responsible for the birth of this creator economy. It is the first time in history it becomes possible to have an income by making videos and posting them on the internet. This one decision is what has kept YouTube at the forefront of the internet for its entirety, right? People are always incentivized to stick to the platform and create on it because they're making money on it. That's why there's YouTubers that have been there for 10 years. Why would they leave, right? It's like Vine, everybody left once they weren't making any money on it. But people have always stuck to YouTube for this one reason. And the genius behind it is it allows for the monetization of any creative idea. And this is really where YouTube versus TikTok, even today, that TikTok still hasn't really cracked this nut fully of like people can have huge careers starting on TikTok, but you have to be doing something that is somewhat monetizable from a brand deal perspective, or else you cannot have a career doing it, right? Like if you have 1 million followers on TikTok where you only post videos of you knitting, you probably can't make an income. But if you post YouTube videos of you knitting for 15 minutes and you have 1 million subscribers, that can pay your rent. Like, and I think that's just really where, again, especially in the beginning, YouTube rewarded creativity, right? Like the entire structure the platform was built around was like, if you post something and people like it enough to watch it, you can make money off of it. And like, that's it. And I think that created this beautiful democratization of self-publishing, where prior to this, if you wanted to post a video, there was nowhere to do it besides television.
You had to pitch it to and get
like
in the
you
room
had
to start
pitch
with.
it to like Fox.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that as YouTube was created to solve this problem of being this video outlet outside of television, that in today's terms, it feels more adjacent to television than it does to what it was entirely invented to do in the first place. Which brings us to 2008. And 2008 is the first year that this AdSense structure is in effect, and you can be successful from it. And that's where we see the rise of creators like Jenna Marbles and Smosh and iJustine and Good Mythical Morning, Connor Franta, O2L. Like this Gen 1 of YouTube is really, really important. And also, again, this monetization structure of there being some semblance of guaranteed income is what allows for businesses to be formed and media companies to be formed. So like the College Humors and the BuzzFeeds and even these legacy magazines like Vogue start YouTube channels, because if there is always a revenue stream tied to the video, then you can justify, I'm going to hire a video producer for $70,000 a year, because as long as all the videos they make in a year make $80,000, that's fine, right? Like you net gain from that as a business. And that's something even TikTok still hasn't fully cracked yet. Like we still see these companies like Jubilee and The Cut and these like really innovative media companies spawn today, but they're only on YouTube because none of the other platforms have cracked this monetization structure the way that YouTube did so early on.
Yeah, and so much of it is the length of a video.
Yes.
And there's two reasons that YouTube is so monetizable. One, the length of a video, so it's more likely, like if you're a user, you're not going to watch a 30-second commercial to watch a 10-second funny YouTube TikTok clip.
Absolutely.
It's not going to happen. But you might watch a 30-second ad to watch a 10-minute video because it's worth your time. And then also because videos are longer, it's a higher barrier to entry. So 1,000 people can become a TikToker a day. Maybe only 12 people can become a YouTuber a day. So it's less competition if you make it through.
Totally. Think in the eyes of like a 40-year-old salesman and now works for, I don't know, Fox in their advertising marketing team. Like their entire professional background for decades has been making billboards and TV commercials. And it's really, really hard to explain to that 40-year-old man from Jimmy from sales who Jenna Marbles is and why it's a good idea to put your ad on her YouTube video, right? Like they won't wrap their head around that. But what you can very easily get them to wrap their head around is like, okay, well, you already have this commercial that you filmed. It's only going to cost you this much money to put it on YouTube, which is cheaper than it would be on TV.
Yeah.
And I think that's why YouTube was able to monetize. It's because they didn't have to switch the format, right? But with TikTok, like these people who are used to advertising on TV and billboards and YouTube, they have to completely scrap all the videos they've made or re-edit them to fit this new format. Which is hard. Yeah. And it's more of a learning curve to it too, especially from people whose job isn't to create the content every day. So that's another thing I think that was really advantageous to YouTube early on, was like even just the format of what they did was very smart and in line with like not trying to overstimulate anybody in a weird way that worked. And we get, again, these rise of these creators like the Jenna Marbles and O2Ls who are generating millions upon millions of views, going on sold out tours, selling out merch, some of them are New York Times bestselling authors in this era. And it's crazy because all of these people were notoriously shunned from Hollywood.
Yes.
And notoriously shunned from the entertainment industry. And this is really where I think, like, again, talking about this willingness to be an adapter or willingness to be an innovator really starts to make itself transparent, especially when you start to compare like the entertainment industry, so like movies and TV, to music, like the music industry, because movies really saw YouTube as the big threat. Like could replace TV one day. So we needed to do everything in our power to kill it. And what the music industry did was like, we don't really care who wins, if whether it's TV and like we support MTV, or whether it's YouTube and we have people posting their music videos on YouTube. Like, we're going to sit on both sides of the fence and just see where the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
And in 2009, one of the smartest inventions in the history of the internet is the invention of Vivo. This company that all it does, which also I didn't know this, it was a joint venture by Universal and Sony. Like, Vivo was fully an industry plant.
It's a Nepo baby?
It's a Nepo baby.
Oh my God.
And instead of like trying to sue everybody for using a sound on YouTube in 2008, they're like, let's just mass produce music videos and uploaded them to the platform nonstop. And they did the lyric videos and they did like the interview, like the Genius interviews and all this stuff. Like this, and Vivo's influence over YouTube to this day is insane. A funny statistic I found was the 87th most subscribed YouTube channel of all time is still One Direction's Vivo channel.
Really?
It has not been active in years. And what's crazy is the 88th place, so one under the One Direction YouTube channel, is at YouTube. Like,
really?
The official YouTube channel has less subscribers than One Direction's Vivo channel.
You did such great research, by the way. Like,
Thank you. I was
claps.
just like so fascinated by this.
Well, and I wonder if for music, they are better at being early adopters of YouTube and TikTok because they don't have the financial incentive of needing people to go into theaters or purchase a streaming membership to watch their movie or show.
Yeah.
Like a music video, they still count as stream whether someone saw it on YouTube or on MTV. So they had like less financially to lose by going on YouTube.
Totally. And it also, to me, begs the question too of like, why wasn't a company like Disney, per se, definitely had the money to, smart enough to buy YouTube? Like, imagine if instead of going down this world of Disney Plus or whatever, they could have just bought YouTube for next to nothing back in the day and could have had this entire distribution outlet of like, imagine if it was anything that you talk about Disney is allowed to be monetized, like the monetization is still on. But if you say Nickelodeon or whatever, or you review a Nickelodeon show, you can, but it's demonetized.
Get suppressed.
Like that would just, I mean, I'm not going to talk about the ethics of it, but in terms from like a raw business decision,
Monopoly
would have been completely changed the industry as we know it.
And also, just to give a quick anecdote to like just reference what you were saying about them being shunned, I think it was a Joey Graceffa video that I was watching way back then, and he's a big YouTuber. He did Escape the Night, but he had a whole like video about like meanest celebrities I've met or whatever. And I remember him saying, and this was before TikTok, he said these big corporations or whatever, they or movie studios, they would invite me to red carpet so I could vlog about it and post about it. But on the red carpet, they would be like, "Who are you? Why get off our carpet? You're not famous enough to be here." Or not put you in like
the press
or like
interview
award
line.
shows. Yeah, they'd be like, "You're not famous enough. Like, why are you on the carpet?"
Totally. And Joey Graceffa is such a good example too, because Escape the Night is something that could have and theoretically should have been picked up by a TV company. Like he was renting a mansion. They had written characters. They had a wardrobe department.
Yes.
Like it really was this
An ensemble.
entire ensemble scripted production. He was really one of the first to do that on YouTube. Also in 2010 and in 2011, 2012, we see the invention of YouTube Rewind. And I think this was so important because it really defines the beginning of YouTube's influence on culture. I think too, where like you can really see in a time capsule like how YouTube could completely redefine what was popular in a year, especially at that time. Like, and it was funny, in 2011, the first ever presenter or creator featured in a YouTube Rewind was Rebecca Black for Friday, which like goes to show how far we've come.
Yeah.
And in 2012, this was the first time that they integrated a signature song or mashup into the YouTube Rewind. And this was Gangnam Style and Call Me Maybe. And when you think about like the random cultural impact that those two songs had at the time, and low key, I think you could trace this back to the 2012 YouTube Rewind being the start of K-pop influence in America. Like, I'm not going to say that K-pop didn't exist before that. It very much did. But I'm saying the popularization of it in America specifically was when Gangnam Style was the song of the YouTube Rewind of 2012, and it would stay on the homepage of YouTube for the entire month of December. Like, the YouTube Rewinds would get over 200 million views every single time, because when you typed youtube.com, it would take you to that page and autoplay it. Like, you had to see it if you used the platform. That segues us really well into 2015 to 2019, which I kind of call this like creator boom. And I think that there are three major reasons for this boom of like why it seems like almost 90% of the main influencers we have today all came from this era. And it is because, number one, this is the first generation of people who start posting on the internet out of a desire to be a creator, not out of a desire to be some sort of other career in the industry. Because in 2010, the concept of a creator or YouTuber does not exist. So these people like Troye Sivan who start YouTube channels, it's because they want to be a singer. And they see this as the only way to gain an audience. And they're like, once I have an audience, I can put out an album. But prior to this, there had never been people who were starting a YouTube channel with the intention of just making a YouTube channel, which is something really interesting to think about. And I also think that's why we get these rise of people like Emma Chamberlain's, who are 17-year-old girls who are so excited to be collaborating with these other YouTubers for the first time. And it's like, you can really see on their face, like they're meeting their hero. And I think that, again, wasn't something that existed on YouTube prior to that, because their heroes were on television. So that's really interesting. And then second is the rise and fall of Vine, which goes from 2013 to 2017. And Vine was owned by Twitter, going back to this whole advertising mess.
It started without, and then Twitter bought it. I learned about in my social media class that they think the reason Twitter bought Vine wasn't to prop it up, but because they wanted to be known as the short form video platform. So they kind of like allegedly finagled. I remember learning about it in college because it happened when I was in college, and they were like, and the guy who created Vine tweeted about it, but that Twitter was like, hey, we love Vine. We want to like make it the next big thing.
Yeah.
Like what they were thinking of back then, almost like the next TikTok. And so Twitter bought it and then killed it like a month later and was like, it's done.
Well, problem with Vine, it goes back to the same problem with TikTok. There was no monetization on it. Like, people weren't making money from it. And that is why all of these Viners got these massive audiences really, really quickly.
The exposure.
And what did they do? Start YouTube channels. It was like this exodus of Vine from YouTube. Literally, it felt like a digital migration happened.
Yes.
Where it was like, build the audience on Vine, move it to YouTube, now you have a living. Like, that was the formula for these 4 years of this like creator boom time. And that's why we get the Liza Koshis, the David Dobrik's, the Paul brothers, all these people like
Gabby Hanna.
Yeah. Like they start on Vine. And last is, I think finally by around 2015-ish, these older industry people, Jimmy from finance and Bethany from sales, have finally realized that like YouTube is the number one attention grabber for young people, and finally start to put some money behind it. More specifically, again, from the advertiser side. It's interesting how even as money is being poured into social media, even today, it is never from this inside the industry perspective. It's like, we'll invite you to the red carpet to post it on your Instagram story, but like, you're not allowed at the movie. Or you can go to the Met Gala and you can walk the red carpet, but you're not allowed inside. Exactly. You know what I mean? It is this weird phenomena of like, we will acknowledge you and appreciate you only when you are needed to promote something for us. But if it has something to do with the actual integrity of the creative work itself, then they're not at all part of it, completely shunned from it.
It's like YouTubers were allowed to be adjacent to Hollywood when it benefited Hollywood, but were never accepted by Hollywood.
Exactly. Adjacent is a perfect way to describe it. And also, too, I think this is when things like brand deals become normalized. Like, that wasn't even a thing in 2008 or whatever. Like, Jenna Marbles was not doing brand deals when she was making drunk makeup tutorials. And it's also a little bit dystopian, which we'll talk about, of like this brand trip era where like every brand was like trying to show off almost to like have the biggest brand trip, but then they would always be riddled with controversy. And it was just weird. I think the whole brand trip thing ended up hurting a lot of brands more than it ended up helping them. But
even to this day, we see it with Tarte a few months ago having issues.
Totally. And I also think that this shunning from Hollywood, but increase of brand attention created this glamorization around the flaunting of wealth. And this is something we talked about in another one of our episodes too, where I really associate the way influencers act in 2015 and 2017 when like everybody was posting in those like terrible off-white construction belts and the Louis Vuitton tracksuits and the
neon
Gucci
yellow
tracksuits, neon yellow, was like the same way reality TV stars like Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian started to act when they got super popular, but were also shunned from Hollywood. Like, it was weird that like Paris Hilton or Kim Kardashian could get 1 million views on their reality TV show versus another show that also got 1 million views. But because theirs was episodic and scripted and acting, theirs was viewed as like real media where reality TV wasn't. And I think that's why these reality TV people, these influencer people started to show off how much money they had.
Yeah.
Like, and that's also why we see content become popular of like designer bag haul or like Coachella vlog and like brand trip vlogs of
they
like,
had to prove how legitimate they were.
it was this overcompensating of like everybody made fun of me when I started out doing this, and then I tried to be, you know, be perceived as like more traditional media or more legit, and then I was shunned from that. So no matter what I do, I'm not accepted. So I'm just going to show like, fuck it, I made it. Is essentially like the mentality that I think developed.
I remember watching a video of James Charles back when he first was blowing up, and he would get a Cartier bracelet every time he hit another 1 million subs.
Exactly.
And he just had a stack.
And I was like, crazy that like we ate it up.
We ate it up.
I was watching that video. Like,
because I think the audience was like rooting them on because their legitimacy equaled like the audience was like, I do have, you know, I'm supporting people who are like underdogs.
Totally. It's this underdog factor time and time again is so powerful. And also I do think that towards the end of this era, so like around 2017 to 2019, the pendulum swings back a little bit. And we see this phenomenon that we always talk about of audiences crave companionship over entertainment. And I really credit this. 3 creators really lean into this really well in 3 different ways that I thought would be interesting to dissect is Emma Chamberlain, Liza Koshy, and David Dobrik, who I do not like for a multitude of reasons, but he blew up this way, which I think is interesting of instead of trying to flaunt some extravagance, Emma Chamberlain really leaned into like, I'm bored and you're bored, so let's be bored together.
Yeah.
Like, you're at home watching a YouTube video with none of your friends. I'm home alone. Let's go to the grocery store, right? Like, really leaning into romanticizing the mundane, as we've talked about. And Liza Koshy was very similar, but instead of leaning so much into the boredom of it, she was very clearly trying to be like an entertainer and a comedian. So I think hers was like, let's take a very, very boring situation, but make it as fun as possible. So like a great example of that would be like when she was blowing up for those like dollar store videos. I don't know if you remember that, when she would like, she would essentially like embody a character and then like go to the dollar store.
Yeah.
And
even something smart that Liza did, of kind of leaning into the humor of YouTubers being shunned from traditional media. Liza Koshy did a fake like 73 questions with Vogue and even edited the thumbnail, and then that went so viral that she was the first YouTuber. And then she was the first YouTuber to be
I
interviewed.
think that video, the 73 questions video by Liza Koshy, single-handedly put YouTubers on the map of mainstream media, because you want to know what happens after that? Guess who hosts the Met Gala?
Liza Koshy.
Liza Koshy.
Exactly.
It was this first, literally a stark example of the exact same format that was done by a traditional celebrity and then done by a YouTuber. And the YouTuber doing it got more views.
Doing it better than
and
some
did
of the...
it better. And it was a funnier video.
Yeah.
And I think Vogue literally looked at that, and Anna Wintour looked at that and was like, oh, we can't run away from this anymore. Like, this is the new celebrity now. So they positioned themselves as an authority figure to be the first to like allow Liza Koshy into this event, and other creators like Emma Chamberlain along the line as well. And then last is David Dobrik, who I think leaned into this companionship factor in a different way that's interesting and was also really popular at the time, which is this idea of like, you're watching this video home alone and you wish you were out with your friends, so I'm going to give you the experience of like a friend group.
Yes.
Like, he really monetized this idea of like hanging out with friends, right?
And he
like,
barely showed himself. Like, it was him filming his friends.
Exactly. It's so like the viewer embodies themselves as David hanging out with the group.
Even the way the camera pans, it's like the way your vision would pan if you were looking at
and
your
the
friends.
laughing behind the screen is supposed to feel like you laughing
It's like
at
a
the
laugh
joke.
track. It would like gaslight you into thinking something was actually funny.
And I think David Dobrik is like a sinister person. Let me be clear. But like, I do think it's very interesting how from 2017 to 2019, you can see this slow swing of the pendulum back a little bit. How people are kind of like, okay, this dystopian showing off your wealth is getting a little bit much. Like, I seek more comfort in Emma Chamberlain, a 17-year-old girl drinking coffee in her car before high school.
Yeah.
And then this phenomena is only perpetuated by the pandemic. I think the pandemic destroyed YouTube culture as we knew it. And I'm not sure it's single-handedly responsible, but I don't see anybody else talking about this. Like, down to little things, like this entire collab culture that the YouTube platform was built on, right? From like the O2Ls to the Team 10s to people like David Dobrik or Liza Koshy, or like all these creators that were constantly featured in each other's videos,
James
right?
Charles was a master at it.
Yeah, overnight, gone. Like, it is no longer a feature of the platform anymore. And I think it's also, again, perpetuated by the pandemic was the first time in modern history where there is a global phenomena happening to everyone all at once, and there is a visible difference in the way people are responding to it based off of wealth and class.
Yeah.
Like, it is no longer cute to see a David Dobrik video hanging out with the boys filming at a party when you're locked inside because people are dying
you
of
lost
contagion.
your job because you couldn't be in a room with 10 or more people.
Exactly. Or no one wants to see a designer bag haul anymore when they lost their job 6 months ago and they don't know if they're going to get it back ever.
Yeah.
And this, again, like the pandemic, I think it just shifted what was popular. And also because of this, loneliness and isolation is at an all-time high. Like, we're physically isolated in ways that we've never been, which is, I think, why the meme starts of, why is everyone starting a podcast?
Because we're all lonely.
Because what else are they going to do? Like,
Yeah.
it was literally like, yeah, you're right. If you are going to be a creator and survive when you have to be locked inside your house, you need to think of a format you can do locked inside your house. So we start to see like YouTube make the shift. Also, gaming becomes a lot more popular, I think, because of that. Like, gaming had always been around, but I do think it really exploded even heavier. Like, I remember Among Us and Fortnite and Roblox, like these Minecraft blow up in 2020 because nobody had anything else to do. So they all started playing them. And also, interestingly, this is the first time in YouTube history where average viewership starts to go down. So, like, in 2017, someone like an Emma Chamberlain was getting 10 million views. And even in 2021, when she's at the peak of her fame hosting the Met Gala, she's only getting like 5 million views. And I think that's because of the invention of TikTok.
Yes.
And also the
Oh my
invention of
God.
streaming platforms. Like, there's a Netflix now, there's a Disney Plus now, there's a Hulu now. Like, there's more to watch and consume on-demand content, which wasn't a thing back in 2010, 2015. So because of that, I think this is where we get to this beastification of the internet, this industrialization where YouTube as a company really starts to lean into, if we're not going to average high views anymore, that's fine. We just need to have higher peaks than everyone else. Like as long as Mr. Beast is getting 150 million views on a video, then it's fine if everybody else is getting 1 million because it's growing the platform more.
It's like instead of finding 15 new YouTubers a month that get 1 million views on average, they just put all of the views behind one Mr. Beast video.
Exactly.
But it hurts the viewer because I can't remember the last time I went on the YouTube homepage and found a new YouTuber that I like.
Exactly. And the only content you see is copies of content you've already consumed.
Exactly.
And you're just so fatigued and annoyed by it.
Yeah.
And to even put it in perspective from a data, like numerically, when I was watching these YouTube rewinds in 2010, they did a review of like the top 10 most viewed videos on the platform. And all 10 of those videos combined had 250 million views.
Okay.
One Mr. Beast video averages 150 million views. So 2 videos from one creator is now outpacing what an entire year of the platform and all of its users combined were doing.
Which is so opposite to TikTok, which gives the little guys a chance.
The biggest chance, exactly. And I also would like to say, I don't shame or have any hatred towards Mr. Beast.
Yeah.
I actually think it's like kind of unfortunate that he is so good at what he has done and has literally created this formula to YouTube that it is inescapable that everybody copies it and sees success from it. And this is why I really put a lot of the weight on YouTube as a platform for not manning up.
Yeah.
And that's why I think YouTube has changed. And that's really why I wanted to title this, I Miss the Old YouTube, because I miss the way YouTube used to treat its creators. YouTube was more focused on doing the YouTube Rewind with 10 different people hosting it from 10 different niches, really focused on who are we promoting? How can we help this person? As opposed to what is one person getting the most amount of views doing? And we don't give a shit if somebody copies their thumbnail and video flow identically. I've literally seen videos that's a Mr. Beast video. It's $1 hotel room versus $500,000 hotel room. And next week on my fucking homepage, there's 10 videos of $1 versus $500,000 hotel room.
And
I'm
sometimes,
what?
Sometimes they'll Photoshop their head onto Mr. Beast's body and it's the same thumbnail.
Oh, yeah. And it's crazy to me that YouTube doesn't stop this. They need to, I just think, man up. Again, on TikTok, that does not fly. If I post a video that has a duplicate clip from myself, I've done this. I've posted clips of our podcast together where I accidentally said the same question twice and it demonetized the entire video in 30 minutes. I'm you cannot tell me YouTube generating $30 billion a year does not have the resources to stop this copy and paste nature of the internet. They can.
And it might go viral for 6 months to 2 years, but everyone's going to leave the platform in 5 years if they are only being fed the same exact creator over and over. And it's instead of doing YouTube Rewind puts their money into a Mr. Beast video where he has 10 creators play hide and seek.
Yeah. And
but it's
what's weird about it too, I mean, we'll get down. There are some weird things about Mr. Beast. Did you know the last ever YouTube Rewind was not on YouTube's official channel? It was on Mr. Beast's channel.
Really?
In 2020. And then they never did another one after that. It is weird the amount of power I think he
and again, it's not his fault
to have over the platform. Exactly.
It's not his fault.
It's not
either.
his fault. It's just upsetting that they don't stop everybody else from copying him.
Yeah.
And I also don't have a problem with challenge content in itself. It's not my cup of tea personally.
And he didn't start it.
I do value people who are able to do it creatively. A perfect example to me this year was Ryan Trahan's Penny series. I loved how it was very much riffing off the success of a Mr. Beast style content, doing something for a month, whatever. However, instead of focusing on this extreme dystopian semblance of wealth, I'll give you $500,000 if you kind of let me torture you a little bit, instead of that, it was based in reality. I'm going to try and get across the country with just a penny. And it leans more on him having these awkward interactions with real people as he tries to like trade items for food, or how he has to reset it every once in a while, or like weird conversations he has on the bus because he has to have public transportation. Like it was not, it gets down to this argument of like, authenticity versus extremity. And although Ryan Trahan's series was still this challenge style content, it was more rooted in real human connection. Like he was actually having to walk into that grocery store and ask them, can he trade this pair of shoes for like groceries or whatever? You know what I mean? Like that is interesting at the very least. And I feel like, again, going back to like how YouTube has changed is it has rewarded extremes as opposed to rewarding realism. Like we no longer watch something that is rooted in a joint human experience, like going to the grocery store, like a story time, you know, like a good old fashioned Tana Mojo story time.
Yeah.
And instead it is like, well, what would happen if you had to hold on to this truck for 30 days, but if you're the last one on, you get it. Nobody's doing that in their real life. Like nobody, it is more adjacent to a TV game show than it is to what YouTube was set out to be. And that is why I miss the old YouTube. It has removed this sense of humanity. And I think a lot of people blame that too on this like industrialization again that we talked about of YouTube, but I would like to say there's very clearly a good and right way to do it. A great example being, I think, Good Mythical Morning. Someone who came from this 2008 era of YouTube and now owns a media company that employs over 100 people, but is still very personality forward. It's very like, I feel creative, that there's like characters essentially, you know what I mean? Like it's still content to me. And I also think too, like, you know, people blame creator businesses and stuff like that, but I don't know. I think that there is so many examples of people who are able to do it right.
I will say, like, one thing that I love about YouTube, again, it's a higher barrier to entry. Like we know, like, thank you guys for everyone who subscribes, because it's hard to grow, but it's worth it. Like I would say like 10,000 followers on YouTube is equivalent to 100,000 or more on TikTok. But one thing YouTube is really good at is like giving the tools to shows like Hot Ones or Chicken Shop Date to now compete with these big late night shows.
Totally.
And like YouTube is the only place that has been able to do that.
Yeah, it is.
But you have to have more resources to do it. It doesn't reward the little guys anymore.
It doesn't reward the little guys
anymore.
But TikTok does. And that's exactly what you said. Like, it just doesn't reward the little guys anymore. And it doesn't support somebody who's like, I just want to do a video because it's funny and a funny idea. Like, do you remember that video of Jenna Marbles painting herself into a chair? I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes.
But it was iconic. And I miss content like that, where there didn't have to be some narrative of tying it into a brand or narrative of like tying it into some semblance of wealth or giving away $500,000 like Mr. Beast. It's like, this is just really funny and I'm going to put it out. And if people like it and watch it, great. And that's what content was. And like, we really just, I think, lost touch with that a bit.
And I also want to bring in the argument that I think YouTube leaning so much into YouTube Shorts has hurt as well.
Oh,
because people really only grow now by reposting their TikToks, but it's now making YouTube a secondary entertainment platform to TikTok because you're just going there to see the videos that already went viral 2 weeks ago.
Totally.
And it's great for growth. But someone who watches you on a YouTube short and subscribes might not be the same user who's going to watch an hour-long video.
Yeah, exactly. And also it's like weird, very clearly that the algorithms don't talk to each other perfectly well.
Yeah, they don't.
Like you'll see really weird, unconventional stuff on your YouTube shorts that has nothing to do with the content you consume in long form.
And I think it just shows like, yes, it might be good for growth. And I'm sure they argue about like why it's great. I mean, we're in meetings with YouTube about why it's great, but it is taking away from what YouTube is good at, which is creative long form videos.
Absolutely. And also harnessing community.
Yeah.
That time and time again is the one thing YouTube has done as a platform, been better than anyone else. Like no one has ever had as deep of an audience as YouTubers get. Like you don't see people you don't see TikTokers getting mobbed at the mall.
No.
The way like Emma Chamberlain and Mr. Beast do. You know what I mean?
You can follow someone on TikTok who has 10 million followers and then never see their video on your For You page ever again.
Oh yeah. Or I've even seen people pop up on my For You page and then I click their profile and they have like 40 million followers. And I'm like, how have I never seen this face before?
But if someone has 40 million on YouTube, like
you know
probably
who they are.
seen them before. Yeah.
Absolutely.
In a Mr. Beast video. No, that's the new rewind. But
literally.
yes.
And this, getting into our last few minutes, I really want to talk about like, what do you think is next? Because you recently made a video talking a lot about relatability fatigue and authenticity fatigue. And when I was doing research for this video, I didn't disagree with the video that you made. But after doing all this research, I do feel like we're gonna see the pendulum swing back again, like how we did in like 2017, 2019. Like I think we're gonna see another Emma Chamberlain spawn out of nowhere in the next few years.
Yeah, and what I mean too by like relatability fatigue is again like the industrialization of relatability. So I think audiences are getting smarter at knowing, for example, I always say authenticity is doing something you would be doing whether a camera is filming you or not. When a creator now is purposely sitting in a car and putting on chapstick while talking because they saw another creator do that, it's not,
I get what
that's
you mean.
Forced relatability.
Okay.
Authenticity is maybe you can't talk to the camera unless your hands are folded and you're staring at the lens creepily, but that's authentic.
Yeah.
And
then it becomes known as your thing because you do this in every video.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see authenticity, but the fake authenticity is going to be weeded out.
Okay.
Audiences are smart now.
That's really good. That was a very good clarification. I think you should make a part 2 describing
Right?
exactly that because that was so interesting. I'd love to talk about that more. And I, again, really think too, we're going to see this resurgence of what we're always talking about of like people wanting companionship over entertainment. I just feel like time and time again, maybe it's just me and because I'm a very introverted person, but like I really find myself turning to content that is like some sort of just joint experience. Like I love the feeling of somebody even just like talking about a TV show that I also watched. You know what I mean? Like even just little stuff like that where I really feel like it's like this companionship factor. Like it's, although I can't directly have a conversation with that person, it does feel like I met someone at a coffee shop who also was talking about that movie that I loved. And now we're like sharing an honest discussion about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that for sure. I think, I don't know. I mean, we're seeing such a rise of like podcasting on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I think in a weird way, podcasting is this antithesis to the Mr. Beastification.
Interesting.
And it's the only thing holding down, like grounding YouTube into reality.
Totally.
Still.
I have had this theory for a long time that content and our attention spans are going to become so short and so bad that the only things we start to watch are going to be things that we don't have to fully pay attention to. And that is why podcasts have blown up so much in the past 2 years, is because people want something that's like I don't even want to sit and scroll on TikTok for 20 minutes anymore. I want something that is like, what can I enjoy while I'm washing the dishes?
Exactly.
What can I enjoy in my drive home from work? What can I enjoy while I'm at the gym or while I'm sending emails? You know what I mean? It's like, how can you be consuming content as this background noise as something else? And I also think when thinking about like creators that are going to blow up in the next few years is really like, how can you position yourself with that? Like, how can you position yourself as someone who's not even trying to fight for attention anymore, but people just seek your companionship so much that they want to turn you on when they're driving home from work or whatever.
Like me, I noticed some of my best videos, even on TikTok or whatever, the long form ones are the ones where I go into it being like, I'm going to purposely make a bad and boring video that like throws everything out the window.
I love that.
And I think that's why we're seeing people drawn towards podcasting and podcasting blowing up on YouTube, because it's really, really hard to be inauthentic for 45 minutes or more.
Totally.
But it's really easy to be inauthentic for a 45-second YouTube short or TikTok.
Totally. I also think it's why podcasts have like really high conversion in deep audiences is like, it's really, you're not sure if the edited 15-second, 30-second version on TikTok or YouTube video is real, but an hour-long podcast is like, you can't really fake who you are in that setting.
And that's why we started our podcast.
And that's why we started our podcast. So if you guys have enjoyed this episode, please give it a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Music. And also subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. We've been really loving these like deep dive review styles, and we have some exciting ones in the pipeline coming up. Also, I feel like this was a Nikki monologue episode. I'm so sorry.
I loved it. I loved it.
I just went down the rabbit hole of research, and I needed to get it out.
And if you guys have specific YouTubers or celebrities or creators that you want us to do deep dives, like we talked about Jenna Marbles in this, it'd be fun to do like a Jenna Marbles.
I think so too, and I think that would also paint a better, deeper image too into how a lot of ways these concepts personify themselves in different creators. But thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Bye. Cool. That was so good. Your research was so good.
Wasn't I? Feel so really bad.
No. Oh my God. No, it was really good.
Because also between you and me, girl, it was